So welcome to Cooleaf's webinar, Making an Impact, How to Create a CSR Strategy that Improves Company Culture. Some housekeeping to get out of the way. This webinar is being recorded, so we'll send you guys a recording following the webinar, and so you can play it at any time. Also, just to let you know, all of the attendees will be muted, so we can hear the panelists a bit better. But if any questions pop up as they're having their discussion, please feel free to put it in the chat and just make sure it says all panelists and attendees so we can all take a look. And here's just an overview of what we'll cover today. Obviously, we're going to meet our wonderful panelists and we'll dive into CSR and employee engagement. You'll learn some takeaways on creating your own successful CSR program, and we'll talk about CSR in today's climate with hybrid and remote teams, and also with diversity, equity, and inclusion being a primary focus for many people. We'll conclude with a free resource for all of you, and we'll finish up with a Q&A. So I just wanted to set the stage a little bit before we get started. Employee engagement and CSR. So according to Indeed.com, 52% workers are reporting job burnout, and that's leading to disengagement at work, employee turnover, which has kind of been leading to this era of the Great Resignation. So I pulled some of these stats from For Momentum's 2021 Social Impact Stats Compendium, and you'll meet Michelle Egan from For Momentum soon. But here I'm showing how employee engagement and CSR is intrinsically linked. So 41% workers said a company's ethics and values were important factors in their engagement. We're also seeing that with with attracting new talent. 88% of employees believe companies should go beyond profit and create positive social change. We're seeing that on the consumer level as well. And on average, since COVID, we've seen an increase of employees participating and joining these engagement programs, increasing by 20%. So as we dive into this, let's go ahead and meet our wonderful panelists. My name is Georgette Eva. I'm from employee experience platform Cooleaf. Here we have Michelle Blondheim of Aprio, Michelle Egan of For Momentum, and Jess White of Cooleaf. And I'm going to kick it off to Michelle Blondheim to introduce herself and speak a little bit about her experience with CSR.
Thank you so much, Georgia. I'm thrilled to be here today. And I'm the B1L Michelle. Michelle E and I never pass up an opportunity to spotlight that when we're together. I've been in the CSR space for more than 15 years, focusing on community relations, employee engagement, impact and measurement, program development, strategic planning, and business alignment. So I have the privilege of providing meaningful community and partnership opportunities, working closely with departments all across the firm, specifically HR, learning and development, business development, communications, and our IDE team that not only help achieve business goals and objectives, but to also create an engaged and inspired culture. So my role as Director of Corporate Citizenship is viewed as a critical business role and a part of the leadership team, which really helps make a difference, helping to bring company values to life, create purpose, and become a business and employer of choice. So I'm thrilled to be here today, being a part of this informative and inspiring discussion. And Michelle E., you're up.
Thanks, Michelle with 1L. As she mentioned, I think you're going to get sick of hearing us call each other that. But I might switch off and just call you Blondheim, but I'm Michelle Egan, and I'm with For Momentum, and For Momentum is a social impact partnership agency. We are based here in Atlanta, but we have employees across the country. We've been in business nearly 20 years, so we've been doing this work for a long time. Our clients are nonprofits and companies and organizations who all want to partner together to, have some mutual beneficial benefits as well as move some goals forward. So our work is really strategic. We unite companies and brands in ways that drive awareness or visibility or funds, and all along the path of driving value for each organization and then the intended community. So I'm going to talk a lot here in the next couple minutes. So I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to Jess.
Great. Thank you both, Michelle. So first off, I am beyond thrilled to have been asked to join this webinar today. So before joining Cooleaf as the director of customer success here, I spent a decade running a social enterprise for a local nonprofit organization. And in that role, I had the opportunity to meet some amazing innovators, thought leaders, and practitioners within the CSR space, including these lovely ladies on our panel today, and to take witness to the impact that organizations could make when their focus was broadened to the larger communities that they served. So when I first joined Cooleaf, one of my tasks was to build out what we call our strategy layers, right? To support our partners in strengthening their employee culture. And these are those pieces that really attract and retain employees because they build value, they build connection, they build growth. And while we start with our recognition and rewards based program, and that includes your typical kind of peer and manager recognition, employee sentiment, pulse surveys, we layer on these various strategies that include things like health and wellness, learning and development, diversity, equity, inclusion, productivity, performance, and of course, corporate social responsibility, which is why we're I guess, including me in this conversation today. So we work with our partners to build out these strategies within each of these layers and use our tool, the Cooleaf platform, to help really communicate and deploy these initiatives. And the end goal being, we really want to foster that engagement and track measurable outcomes. Obviously everybody on this call has a vested interest in this, and I'm sure you are as well aware as everyone else that we are in this era where we have to understand the importance of being data driven. And this is really that nice segue over into our first conversation piece. And I know Georgette already mentioned this and teased this out, but For Momentum just released, the findings within the CSR and employee engagement kind of within that social and impact stats compendium, which I promise we will send everybody at the end of this because you're gonna want it with the stats that we're gonna reveal. But we want to hear a little bit more on this. So I'm going to start out by framing out kind of the overarching question to Michelle Egan. But what are the benefits of a strong CSR program for any company or organization?
Great, thanks, Jess. And thanks to everybody at Cooleaf and especially Georgette for inviting me to represent For Momentum here today and participate in this webinar. It is a really exciting time to be in the social impact and CSR space. I mentioned, I think during my introduction that For Momentum was founded in 2003, so 20 years ago nearly. And we've been doing this work a long time. And right now it is so much fun. And it's really important, but it's also rewarding to see all the different recognition about why CSR and why companies should get engaged. So our agency consistently benchmarks the marketplace. And we every year we issue a couple of pieces of content. This piece of content we just updated for 2021, and we looked at over 75 different research studies, including our own, but mostly marketplace research. We're always looking at the industry trends, and we do that for a couple of reasons. One, we want to make sure our clients are counseled in data-driven strategies, so we want them to be successful. We also want to provide this information to the industry as a whole, kind of as our give back. It's part of For Momentum's CSR plan to, equip practitioners like all of us with stuff that's going to help them do their jobs better. But anyway, so for the last 4 or 5 years, we at For Momentum have seen a huge increase in how companies have shifted their CSR priorities to really focus on the employee. And they really are more actively concerned and investing in the causes that their employees care about as one element of their overall CSR strategy. So long gone are those days when the CEO has a pet charity, and I don't mean like animals, I mean a pet charity, something that motivates him or her or the senior leadership team and forces it down to the employees. Like that's still, it happens a little bit. They're good. Obviously, we're all going to have our personal biases, and the C-suiters are going to influence what their company stands for. But it's really now deliberately tied to the business concerns. And as I mentioned, it's an exciting time, but it's also an evolving time. There are so many different linkages to where a company can invest, from ESG over here, which is environmental sustainability and governance. Then you've got JEDI, or justice, diversity, equity, inclusion. And then you have the UN Sustainable Development Goals over here. And each one of those, it's kind of like alphabet soup, but each one of those areas affects business lines of a company in a different way, and it affects the employees in a different way. So we're seeing a lot of focus on employees, or especially not just employees, but around talent acquisition and retention. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but those are some of the benefits.
Yeah, and I want to dive in a little bit more to that, because I love the idea of funneling down into kind of the employee level. And so, the next question being, how does CSR change that perception of a company or an organization for employees or incoming talent?
Yeah, so first off, employees, I'm an employee, and I know I want to work for a company or a business whose values align with mine. Not 100%, of course, but one of the stats that we have in the compendium is from IBM from 2021, and they did a survey. They called it "What Employees Expect in 2021." And anecdotally, we all know that we want to work in a place where we're feeling valued and our values align. But they found that 41% of their respondents said an employer's ethics and values were more important factors in their engagement more than ever. And so, it's kind of obvious. But there's also this perception versus reality that I kind of want to talk about for just a second. And I'm going to tell a little story here. So back in early January of 2020, For Momentum founder and CEO is a woman by the name of Molly Ray. And as part of our thought leadership, every year she gets invited, well, not every year, I don't want to jinx myself, but most years she gets invited to as a guest commentator in an annual Forbes column. And in January of 2021, her prediction was, I'm going to read it because I want to get it right, but this was Molly Ray's prediction in January of 2021. It says, invest in deeper integrations and partnership work. Consumers today, especially Gen Z and millennials, want to see true connections and meaningful impact beyond one-time campaigns. So that means causes and companies are going to need to work harder than ever before to ensure efforts are authenticated by all partners and not at risk of seen as a cause jack promotion. So authentication is this term that she coined, or I'm just going to say For Momentum coined, because there's a few wonderful support team members that help with all this, but it's a new term that represents the trend of consumers and employee demanding closer mission and brand alignment through a company's purpose-driven activities. So that was happening way back, in January of 2020. And these authenticated efforts are really, really critical as the companies focus on employees and consumers and potential employees and consumers, right? And so, we used to say back in the day, like, it has to pass the 30-second sniff test. Like, if it smells bad, it's not gonna be successful, right? So you have to really balance the reality of what you're doing with the perception. And with social media channels, obviously everybody's on social media all the time. Like, it's so easy for a consumer or an employee to see through something that is not authentic graded. How about the way I worked that one in there? But I want to say one other thing about employees and the importance of employees with another little story. So fashion apparel retailer Express back in 2021, no, we're in 2020, back in fall of 2020, they created their Dream Big project, and it was a crowdfunding effort with GoFundMe to raise funds from customers and associates around through a crowdfunding effort where Express selected a handful of nonprofits whose mission aligned with their mission, which is to inspire confidence in youth, right? So they launched in 2020 in fall. When bricks and mortar retail, nobody was shopping, right? Bricks and mortar retail were closing. It was a tough market. Nobody was buying that kind of clothes. The only kind of clothes anybody was buying was leisure wear, right? But Express authentically launched this project, and they were hugely successful for their first effort. I think they raised about $500,000 that was spread out over these organizations. So fast forward to 2021, they wanted to do more. And they decided to select one nonprofit as opposed to many nonprofits. And they selected Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America. And they are launching a multi-year effort. But their first thing that they did, that Express did, was an internal promotion and internal education. They always have a sample sale, right? And so this year's sample sale, all the proceeds went to Big Brothers Big Sisters, and they raised a couple $100,000. And so that was pre-PR launch. And that was before they went public with anything. And they went public in a big way. They went on the Kelly Clarkson show. They used like a former Miss USA. So they did a lot. They had a lot of positive PR, and they did it right, but they first engaged the employees. And so that's going to look different in every kind of company. But I just thought that was a kind of a good example of like, you're going to do the sample sale if you're Express, and why not use it to leverage your new connection to mission?
Yeah, I love that concept. And I think, you know, the more and more we look at this idea of authenticity of aligning your employees with what you're preparing to do in the community and getting them on board first shows them that value. And so, you know, we know that that alignment helps drive engagement. So that leads us to the next question of how does CSR impact employee engagement? Like, how does that link work up?
Well, there's a few examples there on the slide, so thanks so much for summarizing them. But I want to say one quick thing and one more stat, and then I'm going to stop talking for a little bit. But the magic really happens when a company offers employees opportunities to give financially and to give of their time or their talent or their treasures and volunteer. So that's the magic. So giving plus volunteering opportunities. And I'm going to read you one more stat. It's from Blackbaud and Your Cause in 2020. They said they found that 75% of companies that offer both giving and volunteering opportunities have 2 times more engagement than companies only offering giving or volunteering. And so, you know, we talked a little bit about the Great Resignation. And, you know, not to be Captain Obvious, but I know as an employee, I'm much more engaged when, my outputs are better when I'm much more engaged. And we know that, you know, we know our colleagues are going to outproduce too if they're engaged as well. And nobody wants any more turnover, right? So one more stat: turnover dropped by 57% in employee groups that are deeply connected to their company's giving and volunteering efforts. And so there's so many more stats in that compendium, and I'm going to stop talking about stats here in just a second. But I want to say one other thing, that the stats are also showing us that companies are offering giving, you know, volunteering, but they're also being like more human centric. And so they're really concerned about instilling a sense of pride in me as an employee, and really that sense of belonging, especially in these hybrid kind of environments that we're all living through.
No, that's definitely a great point. And I think, you know, this is a great segue to kind of move it over from the research and the data that obviously your organization drives to the in practice. And so shifting over to Blondheim here, we're going to ask you, how do you use your CSR strategy to create a purpose-driven culture?
Yes. So I'm thrilled to be here. I just want to say thank you so much for the invite and opportunity to partner. So purpose isn't a new concept, but it's become super mainstream and is often a catch-all term for all kinds of initiatives, from philanthropy to cause marketing campaigns to social justice. But purpose isn't one or even a combination of all of that. It is really the company's reason for being. You know, it's their North Star, guiding how the business behaves, how it grows, how it engages. And to Michelle's point, that is where an authentic CSR program really comes in. It should be a part of the business goals and objectives on the quantitative side of things, but then it also reinforces morale, employee retention, recruitment, think about overall engagement. And that certainly is reinforced by a ton of data, which Michelle said, but it's also more qualitative. So you get a really good combination of that. And to me, culture is made up of behaviors and beliefs. And there are several ways that I think CSR strategy helps to create a purpose-driven culture. A few of them are spotlighted on the slide. So focus groups and action committees, they are wonderful ways to engage your employees. They help make sure that your employees have a voice. You know, to reinforce what Michelle said, it is no longer push this down. It's getting the employee to be a part of it. And when they're a part of that process, you know what's important to them. So it gives them a voice and it allows them to truly become champions and advocate that. I use the terminology encourage and enable participation all the time, like for 15 years. And I use those words in tandem because it's one thing to encourage something, but it's a whole other step to truly enable that participation. The best programs in the world won't take off to the degree that you want them to unless you truly enable that to happen. And that's where the company really makes a difference. It's not a one size fits all. Diversity, you know, of opportunities, diversity, whether it's virtual or in person, but also, you know, diversity of giving, like Michelle said, monetarily as well as volunteerism. And I think a lot about our employees give a tremendous amount of themselves to their work day in and day out. So when I think about encouraging and enabling participation, one of the things that I am really cognizant of is how can their family and friends get involved in these initiatives as well? You know, it's not for us to take away more time, but how can we help inspire and get that participation and engagement, you know, outside of work as well? When we think about reinforcing and recognizing, it's so important to celebrate. Like, to me, it's important to celebrate the involvement and the impact. And, you know, do you have a recognition program? Like, think about Cooleaf. I mean, we utilize Cooleaf in so many ways in our firm, and recognition is a huge part of that. We actually are just in the process of inputting a ton of activities for our upcoming volunteer week. And we're utilizing the Cooleaf platform, not just for employees to sign up and get involved, but to celebrate, to recognize. So at the end of this, we're going to be able to have some of these positive impacts and storytelling opportunities as well. It really helps. It really helps make sure that as a company, we're able to articulate how all of these initiatives are making a difference. And I would say communicate. I mean, basically, you cannot over communicate. You just cannot over communicate. We spotlight things on the employee portal. We have, you know, do your leaders have management team meetings? Ask them to spotlight CSR. Better yet, ask them if you can join their meetings and be the one to spotlight CSR. Get to know your management team. It's not only the C-suite. Get to know all the teams and make contact with all your employees. It's a great way to inspire and communicate and tell your story. You know, for example, Aprio is having a leadership summit next week, and I'm presenting on our overall CSR approach. I have a part of the conversation when it comes to our IDE initiatives. So again, it's just that constant reinforcement. It's the emails, it's the portals. It's, you know, do you have town halls? We've been leaning into virtual town halls for the last 15 months or so, but there's an opportunity to have a CSR spotlight. Make sure you're utilizing all of your communication channels for sure.
Yeah. I love this idea of not keeping it siloed. I think so many times we set up these, you know, these areas where we want to encourage and get people involved or, adopting certain aspects of our business line, but we keep them siloed and we don't integrate them into the rest of the day-to-day. And I think that's a really powerful message to obviously convey. So what, I guess, moving to the next question, what are the different aspects or just a couple different aspects to consider when setting up your CSR program?
Yeah, so I love this question because I love to build. Like I say that's, CSR, the power of CSR is really building and creating an impactful, sustainable, scalable program. So this is just my sweet spot. And these are a few things just right off the top that, everyone to me should consider. And, they're not necessarily ahas, but it's great reinforcement, right? Leadership support. I mean, purpose and CSR comes from the top. If, the best programs fail when they're not prioritized, when they're not considered a priority from leadership. And one stat that I found really, really interesting was something like 80% of consumers say that CEOs are the most responsible for a brand's purpose. So those days of CEOs not speaking about purpose, of not showing and leading by example when it comes to their CSR programming, those days are long gone. It has to be an engaged leadership support. And when you think about meaningful community partnerships, one of the things that is, like Michelle had mentioned, it's not just choosing a good community partnership, but it's choosing a strategic community partnership. Where does it align with your business? Where and how can your employees not just support this community partnership once, but in an ongoing matter? How can the community partnership help achieve business goals and objectives? And then how can you lean into your industry expertise and experience to help that community partner? I mean, we're talking, it is a true partnership. And there are lots of ways that you can really make sure that you are leaning into that business alignment piece. Budget, I mean, you got to put your money where your mouth is. You've heard it before, and I will say it time and time again. These wonderful nonprofits need corporate dollars to create programming, to expand programming, to just keep their doors opened. And it's very, very, very important that they have budget for that. And then on the employees side, things that corporate can consider is, do you have a matching program for employees' personal contributions? That's a great way to show support to the employees specifically. Do you have a Dollars for Doers program? That's another great way to, again, celebrate, support, acknowledge community involvement when it comes to your employees. And, one of the things that, going back to, again, business alignment, when it comes to CSR programming, to me, the question I always ask is, where can CSR possibly align with this department? Now, it may not with every program, and that's fine, but at least ask the question. Ask it of HR, ask it of business development, ask it of product management, ask it of all these different departments so that they can start thinking. It may not exist now, but there could be an opportunity, a future opportunity that they weren't even thinking of that could be viewed from the CSR lens. And, for example, the spotlight here with learning and development, we work very closely with our learning and development teams, which, as you can imagine, really makes sense. But one of the ways in which we do is that we help provide board work opportunities for our team members. And getting involved in a nonprofit board, or advisory committee is a wonderful, wonderful way to expand your professional as well as personal development. So it gives you an opportunity. I mean, I've been on a board for many years, and my experience with that board work, I had the opportunity to be a part of an executive search committee for our CEO. I helped to work on a complete and utter rebrand, and I helped launch a new social enterprise initiative just within my role as a board member. So these are all things that when you think about, a CSR strategy and how a company can really infuse it into the culture and what could make things successful, these are some of the things that I like to think about and I think are very, very doable.
That's really, really great. And I think it's interesting just thinking, obviously we selected you, Michelle, for this presentation, this webinar, because you have such powerful ideas and we've really seen how far you've taken the strategy in practice. And I think that's, it's fun being on this side and working for Cooleaf, because I'm behind the scenes and seeing what all of our clients are doing within this, this space. And so using things to incentivize, I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned the incentives around participation. We have clients that actually, they tout that board participation. They give their partners, they give their employees the opportunity to earn and be recognized for involvement in the things that they're earning there. So I love hearing that. I also love the, hearing even just about the ability to survey and get your employees involved in who they want to give back to. I think that's a really key message, and kind of coming from those days of old that we started out this conversation around, where it may have just come, from top down. The CEO says, here's my pet organization, right? This is who we're going to support. Now it's pivoting to, let's hear from our employees who they want to support. Let's dwindle down this list so that we can make meaningful impact in 2 to 3 pillar spaces, and drive it not just on a financial, but on that volunteerism and all these different layers. And so I'm really excited just to see, all of that put into action and seeing the success of it honestly come out. So, shifting, obviously, again, going back to the days of old, it was a lot easier to volunteer pre-COVID, right? It was a lot easier to get involved in a lot of these things, even from board participation and more opportunity to engage with, our nonprofits on various levels. That shift has happened, and going, I'm interested in looking at how companies are shifting their CSR programs and how they're able to really be extensions of their own employee goals, from diversity and inclusion to overall engagement. And I'm just wondering, can you tell us more about the shift and where it's going?
Yes, and I am happy to speak to the, inclusion, diversity, and equity. And, I'll say at this point, if a company is not aligning their CSR program with their IDE initiatives, it's a missed opportunity. And hard stop on that. It is just a missed opportunity. And, I listened to a webinar earlier this year, and they described how companies had gotten really, really good at responding to disaster reliefs. So think about, floods and hurricanes and fires. Companies have gotten really good at responding to that. And that now it's time, now it's important for companies to get really good at responding to social disasters. And to me, it was like this, I totally got where they were going. And I thought it was a really great way to put that. And employees are expecting their companies to have an opinion about certain issues. And you can think voting rights, you can think racial equity. So to me, when you think about ID&E, all of that plays in the space. And, do you have a CSR program that partners with your employee resource groups? They should. I mean, they absolutely should. Does your, IDE initiatives have a community outreach component? They should. They absolutely should. Is IDE a criteria for possible funding? That's something to really consider. Michelle brought up this great example of Express and their partnership. Think about the diversity, the openness of that type of partnership, helping youth, helping future workforce. It's being able to consider certain criteria that really leans into that IDE space. It really makes a difference. Those are just some of the examples.
Hey, can I jump in here on, you hit a hot button of mine, and that's the ERGs, or the employee resource groups. I've been watching this trend, or it's not a trend. I mean, employee resource groups basically have been around from the 70s, and they used to include current employees and retirees, like back in the day. But anyway, so, employee resource groups have been around for a long time quietly, internally, and they've been this internal resource that hasn't always been, fully funded or fully incented or even fully appreciated in certain organizations. But one of the trends that we've been seeing, and one of the things that I'm personally and professionally very excited about, is the recognition of employee resource groups and the role they can play in your CSR strategies, especially because they're representative of the communities affected by certain issues, and they're also closest to they are members of the community, and they're closest to it, the issue. But we've seen some companies now really understanding and investing in their ERGs. And one example was, I think it was LinkedIn, and I think it was earlier this year. They have hundreds of thousands of employees with lots and lots of ERGs or BRGs, business resource groups, and they are actually paying a stipend. So they're recognizing financially, and in other ways, they're recognizing the leader of their ERGs, because it's that important. It's just that important now, that this human centric, bring your whole self to work environment is taking place. And so I think that's a thing we're going to see a little bit more of, or I hope it is. I hope
that's great. And I realize go ahead.
I agree. And one of the things that we've been trying to emphasize with our conversations around how to best utilize ERGs is to change it from like just a volunteer role to a leadership role within the company. And that it really requires the right communication around that. It requires leadership to understand that it is a leadership role and not just a volunteer opportunity. So agree.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead a little bit. And I started mentioning just, obviously the shift from COVID and having these remote workforces. So the question kind of becomes, how can the CSR nurture this shift, right, in this workplace culture, especially given the remote and hybrid teams? And what have you seen, of your teams that kind of adopting this idea of virtual volunteerism?
So I think we've all realized, and I'm not just saying as CSR professionals, I think we've all realized how important it is to pivot and flex. And if you're not prepared to make change where you need, then it's going to be a tough go at it. And I think what this time of COVID has really taught some of us in the CSR space is not just that we need to be able to pivot, but that our community partners are absolutely willing to do that. So they've come up with interesting and engaging virtual opportunities that, yes, virtual opportunities may have existed here or there, but they've really spent time and energy to be thoughtful about it, to provide opportunities that are meaningful. For us, as things are kind of slowly getting to the point where people are able to get together for, let's say, smaller groups, wear masks, they can feel comfortable doing it. For me, I think it's going to remain this hybrid. I think we're going to always have virtual opportunities. some on-site opportunities that we bring things in-house to our company, and then off-site, going back to some of these community partners where our employees feel safe and secure enough to do that. But to me, I think this hybrid, CSR environment is going to continue. I don't see virtual going away, and I think that's okay. I think there are a lot of opportunities, especially with employee base, the employees base being remote a lot more often. It really provides people an opportunity. I'll speak to my firm. If you're in New York, or you're in Nashville, or you're in North Carolina, or you're in Atlanta, the virtual opportunities allow for collective impact across the firm, which is a great opportunity.
And Michelle, I'm going to, just in the essence of time, going to skip forward to the next question, which is, what have you learned to be successful with your CSR strategy? So how do you ensure success?
You want Egan or Blondheim?
Let's go to Blondheim first, and then I'm going to follow up with Egan, because I think you both are going to have interesting perspectives on this.
I think, and I think probably Egan will agree with this. I think we've highlighted several things: the importance of leadership support and prioritization, the importance of making sure that employees have a voice, that we as a company take stock in what's important, that we encourage and enable that participation. It's not just about, hey, do this once, but truly creating this CSR approach and experience for this ongoing level of involvement that can have real community impact. I mean, we could go on and on, but I'm going to pass it over to E so she can, follow it up.
Bring that home. Yeah.
I'm gonna say something a little bit controversial, but you also got to just keep it simple and figure out what 1 or 2 to 3 metrics or measurements that your leadership team is going to look at. Because what is that saying? What gets measured gets done. So yes, all those things: communicate, enable, but also keep it simple in how you're spitting it back up to leadership and the masses.
No, that's
yes.
Yeah, that's definitely insightful. And I realize that we are at time right now. So I'm going to shift our attention real quick before we go. We do have some questions in the pipeline here that I want to make sure that we get to. But before I do that, for those of you that are still on this call, I want to make sure that we are again, just reiterating that we're going to be sending out this compendium for everybody to have. But really, I think the 1-page download that we're also going to be sending out is going to be an interesting thing for you guys to kind of put together. We worked with For Momentum on that download, and it's basically what to bring to your planning meetings, right, for the fall, or how to leverage existing milestones within your CSR plan for 2022. So it's just really about helping you to turn your values into impact. So that will be going out. Again, I said the compendium from For Momentum is going out. It's got a lot of really, really great data. So those of you in this space, please take the time to look through that. Use those stats to really help, build that case for support, get people on board. I think that's going to be a really powerful and impactful tool for you. And then I'm going to shift to the Q&A real quick, because I know we have some questions from our audience here. From Nathan, we have, how do you break through the CSR clutter now? So given that it's a must-have, not a nice-to-have, everyone is doing it and touting it. So where do you see the B Corp movement helping signify the company's commitment? All right.
So I'll take that. That's a really great question, and I'm sure the B Corp discussion is like a whole there could be a whole 45-minute session on that. But one of the things that I think is really important to remember to break through some of the clutter is speaking to the authenticity and the integration. It's really, how are you making a difference, leveraging your industry and expertise within that CSR approach. There is just something to be said for how you leverage who you are as a business and what you do and making that connection. You know, Aprio just launched a 10-year partnership with Operation Hope's 1 Million Black Businesses Initiative. And the reason why this is such a for us is because it really hit the mark on so many things. It leverages our industry, our expertise, ongoing employee engagement. It aligned with our brand about helping believing that strong businesses create thriving communities. It was in our, you know, our purpose and our brand. And then we, you know, it was the type of partnership that when we discussed with Operation Hope and the 1 Million Black Businesses Initiative, we were able to find ways in which we were going to be able to distinguish ourselves from other companies. And, you know, and it's our goal, and we've done our part, and we're going to continue to do our part in helping promote that to the, you know, other CPA firms and the advisory industry. But look for ways in which you can distinguish that partnership. How does that partnership differ in some way than others?
Yeah, oh, that's great. I realize we are over too. So Georgette, I'm going to have you come back on real quick. Thank you for everybody that stay on. I will stick around for a couple minutes as well as Michelle's if you want to stick around and answer any additional questions that might come through. But Georgette, I know you had a couple things that you wanted to close up on.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michelle Blondheim, Michelle Egan, and Jess White for walking us through a lot of great information on CSR and setting up your own strategy and what to consider. We don't have time for the, my last slide was like the Q&A, but if you guys have additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and put their LinkedIn profiles in here so you can connect, continue the conversation, or shoot them a question if you have. Here, let me stop sharing my screen real quick so I can get those in there. And we'll also follow up with those additional resources on, we'll email those to you. And then also, just to let you know, once you hop off and the webinar ends, we'll have a survey. You'll be prompted by a survey. So just share your thoughts, what you thought of the information, and if there's anything else that you guys have questions on. So let me go ahead and do that. And if you guys have time as well and want to go ahead and shoot a question in the chat, Jess said she would be able to stay a bit. I want to be conscious of time. So ladies, if you have to hop off, just let me know. It's totally fine.
We love talking about this stuff.
That's great.
I can stick around too. I'm so glad we did a 45-minute webinar because to give us a little buffer.
Yeah. So let me make sure I get all of, oh, did you post it? Oh, great. And I'll be sure to send that also in the email as well. So if anyone did hop off early.
All right. Well, we really appreciate, it looks like I have one more question here to answer real quick. Just how can leaders use their CSR strategy as an extension of their mission or core values when it comes to their employees?
Well, I think we've
Michelle,
given a whole bunch of different examples, but I think Blondheim said it, but it really, to be successful, the leadership team or the leader really has to walk the walk and live the promise of the values that they're saying the company has. So it goes back to being authenticated.
And I would ask a question: is community impact, is social impact, is community, just the word, a part of your values? And if it's not, consider adding it. I think that having, community involvement, social impact, community as part of the corporate values that is, spotlighted whenever ever leadership gets a chance is very, very important. And if it's not, it's an opportunity. To be quite honest, I think Michelle has provided a ton of data that you can walk into your leader's office tomorrow and say, community really should become one of our corporate values. And this is why. Not, you know, just think about, even just on the most basic level, like leaders love to talk about corporate values. So when they're really out there and they're talking about, you know, like meeting with their next client or potential client, or your, you know, your HR team is on a campus recruitment, you know, event. Community is important. Michelle emphasized it. We discussed it time and time again. So to me, that's a very good question. Is community truly a part of your company's values? And if not, it should be.
And anecdotally, just I was going to say, speaking from the back end, and you know, we partner with so many different organizations that share their company values, and I am beyond moved to see how many have now included something regarding service or community, that piece being called out in, you know, one of the 5, one of the 6 kind of core values of a company. And I think that's a shift that's going to stay. You know, we really are seeing the need for that. So I think ending there on a high note of just feeling empowered as we move forward in this space. Just another shout out and thank you to both Michelle's with 1L. We really appreciate all of your participation today. And like we said, if anybody else has additional questions, the 3 of us could talk all day long about CSR. So feel free to hit us up on LinkedIn, and we look forward to connecting.
Thank you for
Thanks,
the opportunity
everyone.
to be a part. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me. Bye, everyone.